with acquisitions, one of my favorite reasons to do them is because of the relationship that you get with the advisor. These people have had typically 30 years in the industry, and you just get to sit next to them and learn from them and soak up all of their knowledge. You're in their client meeting, seeing how they interact with them. They say, here's what I've done for clients over the last 20 years and why. And so it's a really awesome experience to be able to learn from people who have been successful in this industry.
Welcome to the Kick It Open podcast, where we bring you compelling stories from the wealth management industry and insights on achieving personal success. I'm your host, Shelby Nicholl. And today's guest is Stephanie, aka Stevie Green. Stevie Green is the president of Spencer Financial, a family legacy practice that she owns alongside her husband, Dusty. Stevie is a certified financial planner, and she and her husband purchased her father's practice back in 2020. At that point, the practice included the two of them, her parents, and a longtime admin. And today they are rolling into their 5th anniversary of owning the firm in January. And they are now 17 people strong. So tremendous growth in these years. Stevie has also been recognized as one of Forbes' top women advisors. And she and Dusty have 4 children. So she's a boss at home and at work. Let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast, Stevie.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
So I always start out, and I know you've listened to the podcast in the past, so you know I always start out with a general question around, tell us about your journey in wealth management. In your case, your dad was an advisor. Did you always think that you were going to be an advisor too?
Absolutely not. So my dad started Spencer Financial in 91. His entrance into the financial world was in selling whole life insurance. And he is the stereotypical sales guy. He will go into a restaurant and he will make 5 friends and he doesn't know a stranger. And my personality is not like that. And so I never really correlated that I would end up in that world. And then my first entrance into the industry was when I was 16. I got a speeding ticket. And so I got to file paperwork over spring break. And needless to say, that did not sell me on the industry. I was not, gung-ho about the paperwork and the filing system. And it also makes me really thankful for electronic records that we have today instead of the old school filing cabinets.
Oh my goodness, that is hilarious. And I love that he used his own business. He's like, I'm going to put you to work, girl. Yeah. You get a speeding ticket, you're going to work.
You're paying it off.
Paying it off. It's really incredible. So you guys have had, since you came into the business then, when did you come into the advisory business?
Yeah, so my husband, Dusty, worked at the Federal Reserve for 8 years after college. And he was the first one that joined my dad, which always surprises people because they think that I would have been the first to make that jump. But he joined them in 2016. And then I joined in 2017. And so at that point, my dad had planned to work for another 10 years. We had this, long-term plan. We were going to slowly build rapport with the client, learn the business from him, etc. But then in 2018, so really shortly after me joining, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And so he quickly had to focus on that. And Dusty and I got thrown into the client relationships, running the business, all of that type of thing. Because as you said, my mom was one of the other employees. And so she was focused on his healthcare as well. And then at the end of, or I guess it was the beginning of January 2020, he was told he had 3 months to live. So not only was that, really hard personally, but then from the business perspective, Dusty and I had to quickly purchase it from him, transition all those relationships. And we know what happened very soon thereafter in 2020. We all got to experience COVID and the complications that brought. To stay on my dad's journey, he's still here today. So he's a miracle. And we're so thankful for that. He ended up staying out of the business even when his health was resolved, and staying retired. And so Dusty and I have just continued with the business growth since then. To talk numbers, in 2016, when Dusty joined, the AUM was around 43 million. And then whenever we took the business over, it was at 88 million. Today we're at 240. So that's been such wonderful growth. And we support a few other advisors. And when you count their AUM and combined with our AUM, it's at 445. We're really lucky and really blessed to have that amount of growth in such a short period of time.
That is tremendous growth. And I mean, it comes in your employee stats, right? Your employee numbers as well, because going from 5 essentially to 17 now, you've needed every one of those.
We've tried to hire ahead of the need, but the need's still coming. So the hires keep coming as well.
Oh, well, I'm so glad to hear that your dad is doing well. And then it's a really interesting piece about how it created this opportunity for you and the growth since. So much of your growth has been through acquisition activity. And I hear, many advisors want to acquire books of business and they never quite find the right connection and the right deal. And yet you've done several of these and have these advisors whose clients you're servicing as well. Tell us about the acquisition activity so far.
Yeah. Well, my dad is the connection to how this all started, right? And so he had this long time in the industry and he built rapport with peers along the way. And so I will say we had it easy from that perspective, that because a lot of advisors knew him and trusted him, they naturally transitioned that trust to us. So we're very thankful for that. But we started the first transition in 2017 with an advisor. So that was right after I started, but before we had taken over the business. And then we've recently completed 2. We have 3 others in progress. And then we're in talks with probably 2 to 4 additional ones for 5-ish years down the road. So we have a lot of activity going, which is great. The 2 that we've completed since Dusty and I took over the business added about 40 million to our AUM. And then the ones that are in process, we anticipate will add about 175 million over the next 5 years. So a lot of growth during that time frame that we're really excited about. When we talk to these advisors, each one has a different situation, has different desires. And so we set up the transition period different for each one, depending on what they're looking for. We recently did one where he went RIA. And so we purchased the group of clients that he couldn't take with him. We have another one who had a health situation. And so she quickly decided to retire. In those 2 situations, we weren't able to transition the client relationships. It was more, hey, here's your new advisor. And we start the relationship from there. But in the majority of the situations, and what we like to do is kind of have a 2 to 3 year runway where we get introduced to the client, hopefully a year before we tell them that the other advisor is planning to retire, and then build rapport with those clients over long periods of time, because it is about building a trusting relationship to get those clients to continue to be your clients after that advisor retires. And that works pretty well, that 2 to 3 year time frame.
I think it's a pretty common time frame that I hear. I did have lunch recently with someone and they were telling me that they had done an acquisition but they didn't put like an end date on the sort of selling advisor's full retirement. Mm-hmm. What do you think is sort of best practice there? Should there be an end date? How should that be structured, both from the standpoint of the advisor who's retiring, but also for those who are taking on that client book?
Yeah, It is a hard conversation to have because the advisor may be working through that on their own. And so it is much cleaner if you know ahead of time what that transition period is going to be and what it looks like. And I think if it isn't clear, then you just have to determine, okay, is this relationship, this client book, something that I'm so interested in that I'm okay taking that ambiguity, or saying no, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's the difference there. I will say, though, with acquisitions, one of my favorite reasons to do them is because of the relationship that you get with the advisor, not even the clients. I mean, these people have had typically 30 years in the industry. And so you just get to sit next to them and learn from them and soak up all of their knowledge. And I feel like I've skyrocketed my growth of years, especially the art side of things, because you're in their client meeting, seeing how they interact with them. Before the meetings, they say, here's what I've done for clients over the last 20 years and why, with each one. And so it's a really awesome experience to be able to learn from people who have been successful in this industry.
I love that. And you're taking on something that's really near and dear to their hearts, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've built these relationships over a long period of time. Like you said, a 20-year client relationship. They have to be, the sellers have to be nervous, right? And they have to be worried about whether or not you're going to handle the clients in the same way. We hear a lot about deals and metrics and then the money of it, right? I think the other more empathy-driven side of it has got to be just as much of an importance to them. I
like to say, similar to clients, because I say this for clients too, but think about what they're meaning, not always what they're saying. And that really comes into play when advisors are saying, well, I don't want to retire because I don't know what I would do with myself. They say that a lot. And a lot of times it's more about they want to make sure that they feel good about what's going to happen to their clients after they retire. Because I've seen the transition of people saying that it's more about myself. And then once they feel comfortable that you are going to continue to service them, maybe not in the exact same way, but that you're going to look out for the client's best interest, you're going to continue their legacy, they just start letting go of that rope. And it's really neat to see their own mental transition from how am I ever going to retire to, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah. And I love that also you mentioned the learning from them. Mm-hmm. I think that's an underappreciated benefit of that long transition process, of that 2 to 3 year agreement.
Yeah.
Right. But in that process, you almost have to know that you want to learn from them. How do you kind of evaluate that culture fit, if you will, and whether or not they are the right fit for you all to take on?
It's a really important thing to evaluate because you're going to spend more time with that person than you do even with your own team or employees, any client, sometimes your family. Depending on the size of the business, you spend so much time with that advisor that it's really important that, one, you just like being around them. It's simple. Are they a nice person?
Yes.
Do you enjoy having conversations with them? Are they nice to clients? Do they view caring for clients in the same way that you do? Do they look at how much money they're going to make from a transaction, or do they look at this is what's right for the client? And it's just an important thing to evaluate ahead of time is, will you enjoy spending that much time with this individual over the 2 to 3 or more years? Because a lot of times they end up being your client too. So about half of the ones that we've acquired are still our clients.
Oh, good point. So they're keeping tabs on you and your client service.
Yes, exactly.
With the lens now of the client and of overseeing their own clients, their past clients.
It's a whole nother, type of relationship. but
Oh,
it's
that's
great.
funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, and you mentioned your dad has been such a connection
Mhm.
element to these advisors who are seeking a successor.
Yeah.
Tell us about how he has made that happen.
Well, he taught me this early on. And I have to say, it was one of those lessons that I thoroughly disagreed with him to begin with. But looking at advisors as collaborators versus competitors. And so whenever I first started, I was like, Dad, why are you going to lunch with this advisor down the street? Like, why are you spending time with him instead of your clients? And it was more about relationship for him. He wasn't looking for anything from these people, just building relationships, having a colleague, someone who understands what's going on in the industry and sharing insights. And so it took me a little bit of time to view it like that, but it really is true that we have such a unique industry and there's enough clients to go around. And so building relationships with advisors is just as important as any other business growth goal that we have. We can learn so much from each other. I have a Zoom with a group of female advisors, and I'm lucky enough to have been added recently, but they have been doing this for over 5, maybe 7 years at this point, and it's just amazing what we can learn from each other.
Oh, I love that. And, I love creating community, right?
Yes, yes.
And especially among women in this industry.
Yeah.
But it seems too that your dad, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys are part of Cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's been an independent financial advisor owning his practice for a long time. And so
Yes.
it feels like maybe that can be sometimes viewed as almost a little isolating. And so he
Mm-hmm.
found a way to find colleagues and
Yeah.
find peers. And that's what he
Yeah.
was doing.
Yeah. And especially since he was the only advisor for the majority of his time frame. Now with our team, we have the larger team that we get some of that community from. But
Yes.
so many solo advisors have to seek that out in order to have that colleague peer-to-peer type of connection.
Yeah, I was talking with someone who is looking at breaking away from a more traditional kind of wirehouse regional firm.
Hmm.
And one of the things I said to her was, as you think about this, instead of always your community coming from within the single firm that you're part of,
Mm-hmm.
you'll actually be able to learn from people who are at all of these different firms instead.
Yeah.
And so it seems like that's been part of your dad's legacy for you. Certainly inside of the firms like Cetera, they have a great opportunity to build community within the Cetera platform as well, but also beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey everyone, Shelby here. Have you ever had a great conversation with a colleague or girlfriend and you leave with an energy boost of inspiration, ready to fight another day? If you're a woman in wealth management, you know that this industry is pretty male dominated. And you also hopefully have experienced the great energy received from gathering with other women. And that feeling was the inspiration for Muriel Network, a digital community for women in wealth management. Learn more at murielnetwork.com. MURIEL network.com. You mentioned earlier that every time you guys do a deal, or I shouldn't call it a deal, right? It's a transaction, it's a relationship. Every time you take on one of these projects, you are potentially doing each one a little bit differently to meet the needs of the advisors and the clients.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you're using, deal structure so people don't feel like they're getting pushed out?
Yeah.
And maybe, how some of those have differed.
So this goes again to, especially in the beginning, trying to figure out what they're meaning instead of always what they're saying. And so we've done one-time deal structures, like those quicker ones where we just pay them flat out and that relationship is done. A lot of times we use a bank at that point to fund those transactions. And then we've done a few where we have a down payment and then we pay over a period of time, either monthly or quarterly. Sometimes the advisor is self-funding those, and then other times there's a bank involved. Typically, we had done less than a 5-year time frame, but one of our lessons learned from the last couple of years is that 5 years really, when you're doing a lot of these, may be too short of a debt structure. And so we were recently connected to an advisor who has grown his business exponentially in the last 10 to 12 years through acquisitions. And he says he always does 10 years for the loan or the debt associated with the acquisition, because that gives you the cash flow in the interim to hire the extra employees to service the book of business, to continue, living in the meantime, and then also preparing for future growth potential. That way you're not cash strapped in the meantime while you're paying off some of these debts along the way. And so that's been a big transition point for us here recently, is trying to structure those debts differently than what we had before.
Yeah, one of them too that I was interested in, for if you can chat a little bit just about it, is also where you've maybe have taken on the book of business like a tranche or a section at a time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you tell that story?
One of the advisors that we're currently working with, she is a fireball. She is amazing. And her story is one in of itself, but she is ready to start scaling back, but not ready to fully retire. And so she identified a couple of months ago a group of clients that would make sense to go ahead and transition. And so we purchased what we're calling a tranche, a tranche of clients, where we had the agreement, we had the payout, and then we ended up we are servicing those clients going forward and building that relationship. And then we just had a call on Friday to talk about tranche 2 and what that's going to look like. And so the first tranche ended up being the lower revenue clients to kind of tiptoe into the process. Mm-hmm. The second tranche is going to be more groups of people. So who's going to talk to who, so that we can control the messaging a little bit. And so there are a few higher net worth clients in the second tranche that will also go with maybe the lower revenue ones, because they're within the same network. And so there's different ways that the breakdown of the business can go depending on the situation. It could be anyone who lives in a certain state, or anyone who's within a certain driving distance. There's lots of different ways that someone could break down that book if they want to continue servicing certain people but are ready to let go of others.
Yeah, I like that idea of that sort of gradual slowdown that she's experiencing, right? And she's saying, I'm ready to scale back, but not be out completely.
Yeah.
And I think that's likely for many people.
Yeah. It works so well that one of the other books that we're working with is probably going to start that process next year too. Just it helps from a timing standpoint. It also helps on our end that we're not taking this huge amount of clients at one time, and instead can kind of slowly incorporate them into our business.
That's great. And when you're incorporating them into your business, obviously you have scaled up your hiring so much to accommodate all of the new clients and the new work that you're taking on. How are you hiring and finding the right people for your business?
So my answer is not going to be one that you would find in a business book, because we do it the way that you're told not to. We have more of a friends and family type concept. We think about what is important in the next person that we want to hire. Is it client services? Is it an analyst? Is it another advisor? And what skill set will be successful in that? Not necessarily that they have the experience, but they have that natural skill set. So an example of that is our most recent hire. She was telling us how she was hosting Thanksgiving. And for Thanksgiving, she put together a spreadsheet and had what everyone was bringing, right? That part of it is normal. Lots of people do that. Well, she took it to the next level, and she had what needed oven time and what temperature and how long, so that she then was able to create a schedule of her oven times to make sure that all the food was hot when they were ready to eat. And so that's just an example of like, okay, our client services people, it is imperative. They're organized, detail oriented, all the things. And she does that for her personal life. That's going to transition really well into the office setting. And so that's an example of kind of the things that we look for when we are trying to identify that next hire. And so we think about, okay, who in our network has that natural skill set, as well as high achieving self-starter. I think those are two things that are important no matter what position you're hiring for. And then we reach out to the person. We say, we thought of you for this role, and here's what it would entail. Are you interested? And if now's not the right time, let us know if there is a time that is. And we've had friends who we had that initial conversation probably 18 months before it was the right time, but then it ended up being the right time. And sometimes it was the right time then. And so a lot of our employees and our team are good friends that we've known for many, many years. And that helps us when we're doing our own transition of relationships, because let's be honest, we all only have a certain amount of time. And so when we're bringing on these additional clients, I have to let something go. And so because of the rapport that we've built with them over time, that gives Dusty and I the comfort that we can let these other things go, and they're going to handle it, and they're going to handle it really well, and sometimes even better than we handle it. And so it's really great to have a team that we can trust so much with all aspects of things.
It's really beautiful, I think, how that is working out, because not only are you accepting business from these advisors who have worked long and hard and applied themselves to their clients, you're also having to give up some of your clients.
Yeah.
And continuing to build it. It just feels like a whole full circle type of moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
A big part of your growth has been M&A. But as you talked about the numbers earlier on, it struck me that it obviously is not all M&A that is adding to your growth. You are organically growing at a very high clip as well. Tell us about how you are building your organic growth.
I think it's a couple of ways. One, I mean, everyone says they just have really high customer client service, right? I feel like we really embody that. And one of the ways is we offer complimentary financial plans to all of our clients. We don't have them pay for it. And we think that's best for the client. That's the number one reason that we do it. But it also leads to a lot of rollovers, because there's assets that the client has just left there because they didn't know they could do anything with it, or they didn't know what the process was, or they forgot about it. I've had so many clients be like, I forgot I had that account. And so it's a really easy question during that process. Well, would you like to roll it into your account here so you don't have to manage this and potentially forget about it again? And so that has helped with a lot of that organic growth. And then the other thing is referrals. So we're really blessed to live in a pretty tight-knit community. And so we have a lot of local referrals, but we also, I think, have clients in almost 40 states now. So a lot of referrals from our nationwide clients as well. And a couple of years ago, we started sending charcuterie boxes to anyone who referred someone to us. They didn't know ahead of time they were going to get it. But when someone called in and said, so-and-so referred me to you, the next email after getting off that phone call is to order a charcuterie box as a thank you. And that's gone over really well. And it's a really easy way to say thank you to our clients who are continuing to, spread our name to their networks.
Yeah, you gave them a charcuterie spread.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that was really dorky, but I couldn't stop myself. Okay, well, one other topic. I know we're coming up near the end of our time together today, but one other topic I wanted to hit on, because talked about it at the beginning. This is a family business. Mm-hmm. You and Dusty have 4 kids.
Yes.
Hopefully they would ask this question to Dusty too. But my question to you is, how are you balancing all of that? Yeah. And Do you divide work from home these days? And by the
Mhm.
way, my husband and I own our business together. I feel like we live a very integrated work-life
Yeah.
world now. Tell us if you do too.
I've heard you say that, the whole work-life integration versus work-life balance, and it just like hit a light bulb off in my head because that's exactly it. And I think COVID did that to me is when it flipped that switch of, okay, I have 24 hours in the day and here's all the things that I need to get done because I had 4 kids at home, during that time frame as well. And just understanding that, sometimes I'm going to drop off a kid at dance at 5 o'clock and then I'm going to work from the car. Or sometimes I'm going to leave early for a wrestling meet. And so it's not the normal 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever that time frame is. It's here's the job I have to get done and I'm going to get it done when I can. I will say for efficiency's sake, we do have a clear separation of duties with a few things. So I handle all of the kids' schooling, anything that has to do with school or healthcare, and he handles most of the sports items. And so that helps from if something has to do with one of these areas, we know who is the point person on that. The other thing I've tried to do this year is to be where you're at. And so when I'm at a kids thing, trying not to think in the back of my head about all the things that I still have on my to-do list for work. So this weekend, my daughter was in the Nutcracker, and I'm not kidding when I say it went from 5 o'clock on Friday to basically 5 o'clock last night, and it was the entire weekend. And there were times where my brain started putting me in a different location. I was like, be where you're at, be where you're at. And so it's a lot of self-talk and self-redirecting, but it's important because I know these years are going to go fast, but juggling multiple balls is hard.
Oh, I love that. Be where you're at. I definitely need to learn that. My youngest, a couple of days ago, even told Ron and I, my husband and I, to stop talking work. And I was like, oh, okay then.
Sometimes that's good. And sometimes I think my kids have learned so much from our business conversations too. And so that's really great to hear. What was it? Last week, I had gotten off the phone call with an employee, and one of my kids, I think it was my 11-year-old, we got to talking about his teachers and how some of his teachers dictate orders to them and are, kind of rude maybe in their delivery. And then others are more collaborative and things like that. And I said, okay, so when you're an adult, how do you think you're going to get the best? If you're a leader, how do you get the best out of your employees? And he was like, oh, definitely the collaborative approach. And I said, yeah, so maybe just think about that. And he goes, but you always view your employees as your friends. Like you never dictate anything to them. You always ask them what they think about it. And to hear an 11-year-old reflect on the conversations that he's overheard and to make that connection was just amazing.
Oh, that is like a proud mom moment
Now
for
it's
sure.
like, oh,
You're like, oh,
okay.
you listen, and I'm doing the right thing.
I know.
This is amazing.
Yeah. So thank goodness it was a good thing that he overheard, but
Oh, it was. I love that. Okay, we are right at the end of our time. This has been such a great conversation, and I know people have taken away so much already. And, one of the things I'm doing at the end of my podcasts now is to do a quick little fun 5 questions or so, quick round of questions. Do you remember the old Vogue? They would follow the celebrity around through the house and ask 73 questions. Like, that's where this comes from because I'm that old and I loved it.
Awesome.
All right. So, what's your favorite app on your phone right now?
So my husband makes so much fun of me for this, but it's Block Blast because all my kids are obsessed with the game. And I just feel like whenever we're doing it, there's like this connection that you can't get if you're doing something different. And it's nice because you can get in and out of it and you continue playing from wherever you were at before. And so it's a really good like brain rest while also using your brain while also connecting with my kids.
Oh, I love that. I'll have to look into that. All right. What is your favorite client gift to give?
So the favorite one is what we already talked about, the charcuterie box. But another one that I like is when people lose someone who has been really important to them. A lot of times we send a wind chime, and a lot of times we'll personalize it with a saying that we've heard would mean something to that client. And we've gotten some really great feedback from those and how touching it is to receive the gift, but also throughout the rest of that person's life when they hear the wind chime to be reminded of the person that they lost.
What a beautiful tribute. What a beautiful gift. What is one thing that you've always wanted to learn but haven't had the chance to yet?
This is really stupid, but how to curl my hair. I grew up when we straightened it, right? And so I never learned how to do the like twisty motion with my wrist, and I can't do it. And
I know the wands scare me
still.
still.
I can't do them.
Yeah. All right. What was the last thing that you used ChatGPT for?
Don't hate me, but I've never used ChatGPT.
What?
I know. Oh. I think I need to download it today and start using it.
It is incredible, my friend. You do have to start using it. And you just experiment with it and you'll be blown away. You'll be blown away.
I have heard the one that I really want to try out is when you put in the different things that you have in your pantry and it comes up with a recipe. That's going to be the first thing I try with it.
Yes, I think that's a really good one. I've had it do meal plans. I'm not very much in the habit of doing that one, but meal plans are great. I use it for a lot of my like social media writing and ideas.
Yeah.
You know, you can ask it like, what are 5 common worries of people in this phase of their life?
Oh, nice.
And it will give you a summary. And then you can say, write a LinkedIn post or write an Instagram reel, and it'll knock those things out. Mm-hmm.
Our team has used it for a lot, for like that kind of stuff. So drafting emails, actually drafting some of our transition emails in regards to the advisor book of businesses. But I just haven't actually used it yet.
Yes. Well, those are all really good ones. We've used it for healthcare stuff to understand the results in a layman's terms, those kinds of things.
Good.
Yeah. All right. So our last question, what is a money mantra or a money value that you hope to pass on to your children?
I would say live within your means. I've done financial plans for people who spend $1,000 a month, and I've done financial plans for people who have spent $40,000 a month. And both of those were okay because that was within their means. And so I think it's just really important to understand your own parameters and live within those.
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you so much today for joining us, Stevie. I am thrilled that we got to have this conversation.
Same. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Kick It Open podcast. The Kick It Open podcast is hosted and developed by Muriel Network in partnership with Catalyst. Learn more at startwithcatalyst.com. Kick It Open is produced by Shelby Nicholl, edited by Aaron Sherman, marketing by Sabrina Portnoy, graphic design by Don Gallagher. If you found today's podcast valuable, please help us out by subscribing and sharing with your friends. Just click that little plus sign or the follow button wherever you get your podcasts.